away, our inner nature is being renewed day by day. For this slight momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all measure, because we look not at what can be seen, but at what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, but what cannot be seen is eternal. For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, but eternal in the heavens. May God add his own blessing to the reading and hearing of his holy word. So Paul begins this letter, or this section, and what's prior to it, he's talking really about our frailty, about our weakness as people, about brokenness, and the struggles that we have to live in a world and under circumstances that leave us kind of sometimes broken down, pressed upon, crushing kinds of weights of life. And we can see that in the world all around us. Now, when I was a boy, we had, I can remember feeling, we were always told that we were safe and that our parents would keep us safe and our schools, our places like that would keep us safe. And I never really questioned that. I can remember, I heard this week, I listen to old-time radio shows sometimes when I'm driving around in the car, and they have the old ads on a lot of times. If you ever download these, and of course a lot of them are available free online. I've been listening to Our Miss Brooks. Anybody remember that one? That's a great, that's fun. Yeah, teachers, if you're a teacher, you need to probably find that and listen to it. Why are you smiling like that? I was talking to your sister. It's all right. But in one of them, that I was listening to earlier this week, the ad came on. It was like a service announcement, a public service announcement, and the star of that old radio show, Eve Arden, was reading a little, or giving information about go to the Civil Defense Information place, write them, and ask them for how to survive a nuclear attack. And it reminded me of my own days in grade. This is how old I am. I can remember in 4th and 5th grade, we had drills at school on how to protect or how to get under the desk, how to cover our heads up the right way and keep our eyes covered because of the flash. I remember all that stuff. Did you do that around here? This is up in St. Louis. And I remember my friends, we were talking like, why would they come after St. Louis anyway? We couldn't figure that out. Of course, I guess when you're in 4th grade, you don't think about places like McDonnell Douglas and Scott Air Force Base and a bunch of Fortune 500 companies and whoever knows what else that we don't know about. But, the whole idea was they were trying to give us a sense of security. Here's what you do. And it made me look up this week. I thought about trying to put a little cutting of video together, but the videos were like 10, 20, sometimes longer. But they were the old videos. You can find them on YouTube, the old videos on why you can survive a nuclear attack and how to give yourself your best shot. And it's really interesting. And, of course, I'm thinking the best way to survive one, if it actually happens, is like be really far away. That's pretty much what you got. But as a child, I was always given the opportunity to feel safe. And I appreciate that. I think that's important. Do you know they've done research on this, and it's fascinating. The people that feel the safest and the most secure, the best adjusted, are not the people that necessarily live in what we would call safe places. It's people that live in homes that are stable. And this includes places like in the Middle East and in parts of Eastern Europe where they have been through war-torn circumstances that still are there. They find research has found that children are better adjusted and feel more secure, even in those kinds of war places, when the homes are solid. And if we really stop and think about it, we kind of can figure that out, I believe. Even in this country, we have plenty for the most part. We look at areas, most of them in poverty places, not always, but areas where the homes are less stable. And sometimes it was the kids that struggle the most. And there's a lot of family research in this country starting in the 70s that has borne that out as well. Feeling safe at home. Now, when I was a kid, we did feel pretty safe at home. Later on in life, I came to feel a sense of peace at my parents' home after I was out
facing the world, and but I felt pretty safe at home. Now I didn't have the peace as much when I was younger, and I don't think you're supposed to. I mean, there were rules to challenge, right? And there were chores to evade, and there were lectures to be delivered, and there were whoopings to be had, and they were had. But you know what? There wasn't anywhere else I wanted to be. Never really thought about it. We were cared for. We were fed. We had plenty. Sometimes we were fed more than we wanted. My mom had this thing. If I make it, you're going to eat it. That was my rule. I don't do that anymore. Does anybody do that at your house? Thank you. My dad would be like, she took time to make this. You're going to eat some of it. The part I didn't like was that my mom was like, if you don't take enough, though, I'm going to put enough on your plate for you. And she was a generous cook. And of course, that meant I was going to be a slow eater because I'd pick at it, trying to avoid it. And I had a very strict home. Now this I don't know what y'all think about this. But like my mom put the timer on. After a while, she said, "You better get this done." And at first, there was no dessert. Well, I learned I could live without dessert if I didn't have to eat turnips, right? But then it got to the whooping part. So anyway, it was, but it was safe, and I knew it could be there. There are a lot of people that are wanting home, wanting some place where they feel safe and secure, and that's what really, at the base, to me, is a big part of what home is about. Many years ago, I was still in college, early in college. I remember the pastor telling a story, and I've never forgotten it. And I know I've shared it at least once, and if you remember it, I hope you'll enjoy it again. But it's a powerful story. He remembered as a child running away from home. He took his little wagon, and he put a little food in it, I think a couple sandwiches, he said, and he walked off down the sidewalk when his parents weren't looking. And he said, I got about 2 blocks away, and I decided I wasn't sure I wanted to go back. But then I thought, maybe my parents have figured out I'm gone, and they don't want me back. What if they're mad at me for leaving? So he tucked himself in his little wagon behind the bushes in front of a neighbor's house. And he waited, and he waited, and he waited. He saw his dad drive by. Didn't realize his dad was out looking for him in the neighborhood everywhere. And he was there for hours. And it finally started getting dark, and he was hungry, and he wanted to go back, but he was afraid to go back. Didn't know if they'd want him there. He said, finally, when it was after dark, and I couldn't take it anymore, he said, I snuck back to the house. He said it was kind of toward winter, so it was dark a little earlier. He said, I snuck back to the house, and I peeked in the window where my mom, where the dining room was, and I could see my mom in the kitchen through the door where the house was, but he said I could see the table. And he said there was a plate set where I always sit. He says, and I knew I could come back. There was a place for him. See, we live in this world that Paul describes where things aren't always right. They're not always good. They're not always perfect. We are broken people. We are frail. We have weaknesses. And we need some place that's safe. Some place we know that we're welcome. I wish my family was always like that, but that didn't work out for me. I'm one of those broken people. So in the fall, as I was working through a lot of things with that happening in my home, I wanted to do one thing for my kids, and that was make sure that when they came to my place, it was a place they liked to be in. Tried to create that for them. And worked very hard at it because I knew, when I went to my parents' home later, I found peace there. I'd take my kids in, and 2 sons at that time, and we'd go to my parents' house and down in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and it just felt comfortable. If we walked in that door, everything else got left behind. And it wasn't just like I felt safe and secure, and it wasn't like going back home as a child. It was like, I didn't have to worry about stuff. Peace came. There was more than just being secure. There was a peace there. Because my parents always knew how to take care of things. And they didn't have to take care of anything for me then. Maybe that's why there was some peace. But felt good to be there, and we loved to visit. And after a week, we loved to go back to our house. But we enjoyed it, and it felt good. And we need places of peace. And ultimately, that's, I think, what we're looking for. We want a home. We want to be secure, but we want something more. We want to find that place where we know that we're okay, where we know we can belong there, where we know that we're welcome, where we know that we're cared about. That's what we want to find. And we find that sometimes because it's created. Caleb, the middle kid, he, after Christmas, I'd had everything in the house pretty well fixed up, almost everything, really close. And that was part of my Christmas present for the kids. The one was, I want you to feel like this is the kind of place for all. Hannah's been there over one night, but I want her to have that feeling anytime she might come. I want the boys to have that feeling anytime they might be there. And I guess they did. That's what I wanted them to feel. That's what I wanted them to have. That's what I had. I wanted to provide that. So somebody's got to create that, right? For me, it was a work of prayer in a lot of ways, and we need to find God's help in creating the places, finding the places that work for us. That's important. That's one of the things that I love about this church. Now, it's not a perfect church. Anybody who's been here knows it. But man, it's a good place. You know why? Because we belong here. People belong here. Now, we is there's no definition to we. We is who comes through the door. Every time I get a chance, I won't tell all you all visit today. I probably won't say it to every one of you individually, so let me just throw it out there right now. For me, there's one rule in a church. If you come, we let you stay. That's pretty much it. And we're here, we're open every Sunday, except when it's really, really bad snow. But we've missed a few things here and there. I've missed a few things. Church has missed a few things. But we try really hard not to. And when somebody needs something, we do everything we can to be there. And this is probably the best church I've been a part of at doing that. And it's really cool. We have created a church home where people can belong, where people can feel safe. Even if it's not perfect. My parents weren't perfect. I really don't think my mom needed to spank me for not eating that many turnips. I really don't. But it happened. So what? We grow up. It's okay. Because there's a lot of other stuff behind it. My mom was militant about being a homemaker. She was not a housewife. I didn't marry a house. That's true. My dad was not a house. But creating the home, that was a huge thing for her. And if somebody suggested to her that she wasn't doing her part by being out in the workforce, some kind of actualized woman, she'd lay them out, pert near. Not physically, but she didn't take that. And man, have I come to treasure that in my life. Creating. We create. God has created places for us to be. We call this homecoming. We call this homecoming. And it's okay with me. Now, would I love for this to be a perfect church? Would I love for me to have a perfect family? For all of you all to have perfect families and perfect lives and everything? We'd all love that. Isn't that kind of what we hope for? That's part of wanting home. But it's okay that it's not. It's okay that it's not. Because this isn't the last home. It's not the final place. See, part of this pattern of wanting home and finding home and creating is part of the process that we go through as people of Jesus, people of God, that leads us to the eternal home. And that's what Paul was trying to say in this part of 2 Corinthians in the 4th and 5th chapters. Yes, there is brokenness and there is struggle and there is strife. And he says earlier, we've got God's treasure in these clay jars. But that's just to remind us that what's real, what's true in our lives is from God. It's not something we create. If I create a place in my home where I think my kids are going to feel good and comfortable and happy to be, then it's really a reflection of what I hope they'll find in their lives down the road with an eternal home. Paul says earlier in the 4th chapter, because this is a real treasure, because it's not seen, but it's even more real than what we have in our bodies that are temporary, our lives around us, the world that is temporary. It can be crushed, and it can be pulled, and it can be pounded, but it doesn't get destroyed because that's what's real. So in our lives, we want to pursue what is truly real. I've tried to instill in my kids, we have three things wrapped by one that holds us, that keeps us strong. We're loyal, we're honest, we're faithful in ways that are bound by love. And if people can't accomplish that, can't hold that, then it ends up not being a part. This is the kind of thing I think that God asks of us. Be loyal to me, be honest with me, be faithful to me through the love that I provide. And that draws us home. Not a home made with hands, but one eternal in the heavens. I truly believe that this place, this congregation, this church, is a reflection of that home. It is not perfect. It feels pressures, and we get things wrong once in a while. But man, we work at it. We're together. We're together. Ephesians talks about, it's one of my favorite passages in the entire Scriptures. It talks about how God gives us gifts that we can build each other up in love. We love people to faith. We love people to faith. We stand with them. We stand by them. This church has done it for me, and it's done it for a lot of you all in here. Probably everybody here has known that support. The more research back in the 80s, early 80s, they really figured out, when people come to a church, what keeps them at the church? Within about 6 months, they got to have some really good friends there. It's not about the preaching. Preaching should be okay. Music needs to be pretty good. That's important. Got that today, didn't we? But ultimately, it's about relationships. We got to form relationships where people matter to each other and be open to that. That's what I hope we remember. Jesus never in his scriptures does it say Jesus waved his hand of magic faith and everybody turned Christian. He understood needs. He spent time with the people, and he asked the disciples to do that. It's about the relationships. That's what home is. When homes don't work, it's because something happens in relationships. So we're always working. We're always continuing to seek God's relationship with us so that we can reflect that around us. And sometimes we don't get it right. But this is a temporary place. And the eternal home is waiting, and it's promised to us. May we pursue that place with all our faith. Amen.